June 23rd, 2016 meeting of the East Fishkill Town Board. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a couple of announcements this evening. The first one, we're going to be having a meeting on the Hillside Lake project. The meeting will be, there will be a presentation by Renewage, the company that's doing the, providing the artificial wetlands filter system for Hillside Lake. It will be on July 6th, and it will be at the community center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Should be interesting. Basically, you know, where Renewage is, if they're taking the presentation that they did a few months ago, back I think January, February, and they've tweaked it a little bit here and there. They're going to put aerators into the lake, and they're going to be presenting that at that meeting. Also, just so everybody knows, we've gotten approved for $647,000 grant from DEC. That contract has been finalized about 2 months ago, and that's what enabled them to start doing their final design work. Also, we had made an application through Sue Serino's office for an additional $128,000 to help put the aeration system in and clean out the lake. I just got the approval for the first portion, and now I'm filling out the second part that I have to fill out for New York State on that one. So hopefully that one will be approved, and if it is, it'll be very good. We look to also be removing as much of the lily pads as we can. So we'll see what happens. But Mr. Gruber and his team will be making the presentation on July 6th at the community center starting at 6 p.m. Also, before we get going tonight, I did want to talk to the board a little bit, and with our controllers here. You know, right now, we're starting budget time. We're getting into the 2017 budget cycle to create the 2017 budget, I should say. What we're going to do actually is looking at what we're going to be preparing. It's conceptual part right now. We have a very, very conservative 16 budget that we're working with, and it's going very well. Really, there's not a lot of excess to cut out of it. So we're working with that. So we anticipate the tax cap probably to be under 1% this year. Mark, when does the tax cap come out? Sometime August, September, is it?
Yeah, we usually get the numbers from the state in late August, early September.
But we're expecting with the rate of inflation, we're expecting probably less than 1%.
Based on what we've seen, yeah, it'll probably be less than 1%.
And as we know that the governor's calculation for inflation really doesn't address the real costs of a municipality or probably even really a homeowner. So, you know, as our expenses are going up, the tax cap inflation calculation doesn't really address those increases.
Yeah, it's based on household goods and
yeah.
And
so we'll have to deal with that. So what I'd like to propose to the board, because with what I see is the budget we'll be presenting, I believe we'll be able to stand underneath the tax cap. But we do have that one issue that we've been discussing for the last few months, which is the paving budget. Paving budget this year was basically $500,000, and then whatever we could save from our winter budget for highway. So we've just been trying to limping along, doing as much as we can. As we said at the workshop, the way the roads are going, we would like to bump it up and increase the blacktop budget. So I'm going to talk with the board. And Mark, if you would, I just jotted down a few things. If you could provide the town board historic tax levy trends, I would say going back to, say, 2008, if we could just get an idea of the tax levy from then till the last levy, expense trends, and surveys. And we've done this a couple years ago. Similar towns of this size, what their taxes are, just get an idea to put things in perspective. I know the governor says 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less, but they don't really look at anything. It was just kind of like a blanket statement by the governor and the state legislature. So I'd like to put a little bit more perspective. What I would like to do also is have myself and each town board member sit down with Mark and let's look at the budgets, because this is the time we start putting them together. And I think the highway and the blacktop is going to be of considerable significance. So I'd like to do that So Mark, if you can get the board those documents, and if you think there's anything else they need, maybe revenue trends, that's probably a good one. We know that's the opposite of the expense trends. So, but we can sit down and do an analysis and make a good decision on really where we want to be next year. All right, so if we could do that, and before the July meeting, I'd like to invite each one of the town board members to sit down and meet with myself and Mark, and we'll go through concept of 17 budget. So if we could do that.
Absolutely.
All right, very good. Okay, that's all tonight for my announcements. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilperson Marinaro?
Present.
Councilperson Franco?
Present.
Councilperson D'Alessandro?
Present.
Councilperson Cassidy?
Present.
Supervisor Hickman?
Present. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2016 meeting. Clerk Correa, have you received any changes, alterations, or additions to those
No,
minutes?
I have not.
Okay. That being said, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2016 meeting as submitted?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I believe there's nothing tonight under receipt and file?
No, there's not.
Okay. Public comments on agenda items only. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on any item on the agenda?
Good evening. You were mentioning the Hillside Lake Board, the Hillside Lake project meeting, the new date, you're reinstating the new date and that. And I just wanted to mention that when you changed that date from June 15th, you said you couldn't make the June 15th anymore. I had sent out an email to you, and I copied all the council members, suggesting, let's take the lemons and make lemonade, is the word I used. And being we have the community center ready, why don't we use that time slot for open questions and answers from the community prior to the full presentation? I also checked with Mr. Gruber, and he was not available that day. However, his main engineer on the project was available for June 15th. You did not respond to me at all.
Correct.
So you're admitting you got the email.
I don't know if, your emails don't necessarily come up on my machine.
Oh, okay. Well, to further that, I asked Mr. Marinaro to hand you that email, a hard copy of it, which he did.
Okay.
So now, did you receive my email?
No, I didn't receive your email. I might have received the hard copy.
Okay.
Mr. Marinaro was in a few weeks ago.
Did you receive an
Yeah.
email, hard copy?
Yes.
From me?
A hard copy, I think
Yes.
I was given one.
Yes. And can I assume you read it, or you just threw it in the
I
garbage?
glanced at it, yeah.
Okay, so you understand what I'm talking about. You remember, you
Oh, I
recall-
understand what you're talking about.
You recall that I
Absolutely.
asked you, that I did ask you to possibly
Yes.
save that date to use it for questions and answers, being there were quite a few questions already available that you kept pushing off and saying will have to be.
Well, I think we should have Mr. Gruber there and his firm to address these questions. You insist on asking people who aren't doing the project the questions. I think it would be better to have Mr. Gruber and his staff there to address the questions.
Okay.
I just emailed Mr. Gruber yesterday, and they're still working on the final design. So, in my humble opinion, that would be the proper venue to ask the questions, would be on July 6th.
There are still questions that haven't been answered since January 21st.
Then you can ask them on July 6th.
That's what you said.
See,
when July
again,
was
you were
the
asking
15th.
us questions that are really more
well,
suited,
perhaps
that
you
are more
missed it.
suited to the engineer doing the project. We went through this the last time, and you were asking our engineer questions, which really were more suited for the people doing the project. So
Perhaps-
July 6th is when the presentation is going to be.
Perhaps when I was mentioning this, you were off thinking about, I don't know, My Little Pony or something, but.
Excuse me? Excuse
I'll
me?
repeat. I
What
said
was that?
perhaps when I
Would you
was-
report, would you please repeat that?
Oh, I will clearly repeat
Yeah,
it.
what did you just say?
I said, perhaps when I started my statement, you were thinking about, I don't know, maybe My Little Pony or something.
My Little Pony? Please explain that to me. I'm not sure I get where you're going with that, My Little
You
Pony.
never played with a My Little
I
Pony?
I
You
just
looked-
find that a little bit.
I just assumed you did.
I
Sorry.
just find
My
that to be
mistake.
a little bit condescending, sir.
Okay, well, you take it as you want.
I guess I will.
So, I'll
Sir-
repeat that what I had said
Mm-hmm.
was that in that email, I had written to you to use that date, and that I had reached out to Mr. Gruber to confirm he was not available on
Mm-hmm. Correct.
June 15th. However, his main engineer
You're
on
going to
the
repeat
project-
this again, aren't you?
Yes, because
Okay.
you didn't understand it the first time.
Oh, I understood. Oh, wait a minute. I was thinking about My Little Pony.
Thank
There you
for
go.
admitting it. Fine.
Absolutely, sir.
The truth comes out.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, and I'll repeat it a third time now.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sure this won't be the last.
His main engineer was available on that day. So he could have been there to field any
Yes.
pre-questioning that might have come up. Okay?
Okay.
You understand that now?
Yes.
Okay.
May I respond?
Now.
May I respond?
You know what?
Again, I would like to respond that in my
Excuse me,
opinion.
I'm not done
that
yet. I
In my
believe I'm
opinion,
speaking at the
sir-
moment.
Sir, excuse me.
Excuse me.
In my opinion,
I'd
it
like
was
to
best
finish.
for you to address Mr. Gruber as well his engineer. The meeting is on July 6th. Thank you.
All right, back to my question to you. The main question. I sent you an email asking you, can we take the lemons and make lemonade and use that time and date that we have for the community center to field some questions? Mr. Gruber had someone available that would have been there. We wouldn't have been asking you the questions. So let's take all of that rhetoric
Oh,
out of the way,
yes, let's
okay?
take that off the table.
Let's take that all away. We wouldn't be asking
Absolutely.
you because we know you've made it clear you know absolutely nothing about this project. Mr. Gruber is the only person that knows about it. So we would be asking his lead engineer on the project about it. Now, the point at hand is you didn't even respond to that suggestion. Can you explain that? Why?
Why would I, sir, I received an email, hand-delivered email from Councilman Marinero. I do believe I said to him also that I think it was more appropriate to have Mr. Gruber and his entire firm there. I don't think it's appropriate for him to just have his engineer. I know you disagree with that, and I find that rather sad, but that's the fact.
Okay, so
Okay.
you feel that you don't need to respond to an email, it's just,
Your emails, I've gotten your emails for so many years, and your emails go a lot along the same line of your questioning here tonight. So I don't really get your emails. They go somewhere in my machine. I don't know where they go.
can you explain what the line of my questioning, what that line of my questioning is in your eyes?
Which
What is
line
it,
of
that
which
line of my
question?
question? You said my
Excuse me?
my emails go in the line of
Oh,
my
your
questioning here tonight.
emails always started out, and we've gotten your emails for years, and they always start out nice and pleasant, but then they get pretty contentious, as it does most every conversation that we have.
Why do you think that is?
I
Yeah,
have no
Can we
idea.
get back to the facts here?
I'd love to.
Can you stop debating these sort of issues, maybe after, have a discussion about your emails? What else do you have for your agenda?
Well, it's not an agenda item, but I'll talk to you about later, too.
Okay, well,
I got something to
we're
address.
discussing agenda
Okay,
But,
items.
again, this is an agenda item because it was brought up pre-meeting.
Understood,
this is
understood.
an agenda
Well, not
item.
for this
Were you
agenda.
not
You
paying
brought it,
attention?
I brought it up under
Looking at your
supervisor's
phone
announcements.
again?
Okay, what else do you have?
Excuse me, I brought it up under supervisor's announcements, so I know that this gentleman thought it was an agenda item.
As last time you said, yes,
As
it
I
is an
said,
agenda
I
item,
brought it up tonight under supervisor's announcements. Thank you.
which you did at the last meeting.
Thank you.
and
Do
it
you have
came up.
anything else under agenda items? Do you
Last
have anything
meeting
else
that I was
under-
up here,
do you have anything else?
I came up after you discussed the meeting, and you answered questions or not for me, and then you said, well, maybe that wasn't an agenda item, but being I brought it up, I guess it falls into that category.
yes.
So that's why I'm here tonight at this moment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I may, I'd like to ask Mr. Wood a question.
On an
That
agenda item?
pertains to this, yes.
Is it on
to
an
this-
agenda item?
Absolutely.
Which agenda item? Could you
This
identify
is
it?
what you just spoke about, the meeting,
Absolutely.
the email that I sent out that you didn't respond to.
Absolutely.
Mr. Wood, can you give us a very simple definition of taxation without representation?
I mean, it's a humorous question, I think, because of the fact there is no law that governs it, and I, as the town attorney, would speak to the law. I think if you go back to your elementary school civics class, it would be a case where the people did not have the ability to choose who their leaders were, which is the premise of our country. And we are a country of laws. We have a system. People are elected, and government represents the people.
Right. And
And we
those
do have
people, those
budget meetings, and I don't see where really that is on the agenda.
those, it's part of my questioning why you're not responding, why you're not representing me as an elected official. So the follow-up to that then, as you said, elected officials, would you agree, are, what is their title? They are all covered under the umbrella of public service.
But public servants and their citizens don't necessarily agree all the time.
No, they
And
don't
I
have
think
to.
you definitely, clearly have a difference of opinion with some of the elected officials here,
I'm not
which is
saying-
your
Absolutely.
very right. That's the First
And
Amendment.
I would also
I am
point
not
out that,
Right, but they also have the right not to necessarily agree with your viewpoint.
I am not saying he has to agree with
And
me.
I would just-
Not at all. I wouldn't want the world to all agree with each other.
Right.
And I would just point out that I think different people have different ideas of how to treat public servants. And I believe I was always taught you treat people how you like to be treated. You treat them with respect. And,
So you over-talking me all the time, I should just continue to over-talk
oh,
you?
you've
so
overtalked
I
me
guess
plenty
that's
of
what you're
times, sir.
stating. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
lastly on
Oh,
that
another thing
public
on that?
service. Lastly on that public service, that they are public servants, therefore they are paid for by the taxpayers, therefore they work for the taxpayers. Therefore, you could really want to look at it as disrespecting the people that pay them, even though they are elected into that position.
Well, I don't know. My viewpoint is that if I come to a meeting that's being held, such as a town board meeting, which under the law is governed by the town board, I think they're the ones who control the forum of the meeting, the time periods, the decorum of the meeting.
They should.
And I don't think that it gives the right to any citizen, whether we pay their salaries or not, to come in and monopolize their agenda, their time, to get into prolonged arguments with it. I think that's the debate that takes place about subjects and issues at the appropriate time, and of course, the ultimate power for any citizen is the ballot.
Absolutely.
And about a half hour after the meeting's over, I'll ask you all to watch the video and see that I came up here with a simple question. How did the argument arise, as you want to use the word argument? I don't think it was an argument.
Thank you. And I would just like to point out that as public servants, we do work for the public. We would appreciate being respected by the public, and we intend to respect the public. That's simple. It says that. That's what it's all about. Just because you pay our salaries doesn't mean we can be treated in ill respect. So, all right. Anybody else like to speak on agenda items? There's only a couple of items on the agenda.
I
Bill,
just
is
have-
this an agenda item or no?
Well, it's related. I want to make an announcement we have coming up. Can I do
Okay, I'll
that?
let you make an announcement. You should have been here under supervisor's announcements. I would have,
got 2 leagues going on.
sure. Excuse me? I do believe that we do allow the Director of Recreation for the town of East Fishkill a little latitude, and again, we do run this meeting.
And
So
by
I
the
will
way,
allow
what I'm
him
going to talk about is open to everybody, including Hillside Lake.
Good, good.
Next Friday is our fireworks show and concert, and we also have a concert at Red Wing on Sunday. Friday is July 1st, so some people are confused. I want everyone to know we're keeping everything on Fridays.
Okay.
And one question that can come up later, it's not on the agenda. At 8 o'clock on over at our rec park, we have literally 500-600 people there. We no longer have security guards. We only still have one person maintenance at night. I'd just like you to discuss this sometime, if we get more
Okay,
police.
I don't think that's something we should announce to the public, Bill. Too late. To be honest with you. Too late.
Well, I
But,
just think it would be worthwhile to everybody to have.
We'll discuss this in the morning. Bill, will you be in tomorrow morning?
I will.
Okay,
I'm
why don't we
going over there
discuss-
right now because the
Okay.
lights are on.
And
it's
do me
only-
a favor, I know that sometimes you come in with announcements. If you just give them to me ahead of time for the meeting, we'd be more
Okay,
than
I
happy.
forgot that next week it's July 4th weekend already.
You know, it's hard to
And
believe.
also, I think, Bill, you should remember there are 4 police officers on duty and available to
Yeah, that's
respond
what,
to any
yeah, that's what I want to
incident.
just make sure they go
Yeah,
through.
but they're all over the town,
Yeah.
and they're
Thank you.
available to come on.
Because the police presence is what really is effective over there.
Thank you, Bill.
And thanks, Kev.
All right, now we're wrapped up, I believe, public comments on agenda items as it were only. We do have public hearings. We have no public hearings this evening. The first resolution we'll start with, to recognize highway personnel appointment to fill a vacancy. Councilman Cassie, would you please read the resolution?
Whereas the highway superintendent has interviewed and hired Anthony Puglisi as a full-time seasonal laborer for the highway department, and whereas the highway superintendent has submitted a memo to the town board, and now therefore be it resolved that the town board does hereby acknowledge the hiring of Anthony Puglisi as a full-time seasonal laborer in the highway department. Anthony Puglisi will be paid $12.50 per hour. Be it further resolved that Anthony started on June 16, 2016, and that upon completion of his task, he will be removed from the payroll.
Thank you, Councilman. This is a resolution to acknowledge the hiring of seasonal labor in the highway department. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The second resolution for this evening is authorize financing for paving. Whereas the highway superintendent has requested that the town board authorize financing for paving, and whereas we'll be taking out a ban, so whereas the ban would be in the amount of $400,000 and would be paid within 2 years, now therefore be resolved, the town board authorizes the town supervisor to execute the ban in the amount of $400,000 for paving. Now, this $400,000 paving, I'm going to ask the comptroller to explain it, this is really to help us cover our salt purchase for the year. Is that correct, Mark?
Right, so basically, we've saved $400,000 from what we had budgeted for salt and what we're actually going to need for salt. We want to move that into paving.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're committed to purchasing that $400,000 of salt this year, even though we don't need it.
Right.
Probably won't need it. So we are going to buy it this year for use next year. So essentially, we'll have almost no salt expenses. Next
Okay.
year, we'll pay down the debt at that point.
Okay, sounds good. So, but basically, we're looking at a $400,000 ban for blacktop, which will allow us,
From the salt savings.
salt savings.
From having a mild winter.
so then we can pay the contract that we have for the salt.
Yes.
Yes, okay, which is due. All right, yes. Do I have a motion to authorize the financing for the $400,000 ban?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Third on the agenda, schedule public hearing for August 25th regarding transitional business uses special permit. And to the board, I just got a copy of the draft law.
Oh, John,
Yes, if
number
you would.
3?
Table.
Oh, table.
Yeah.
For the
Okay,
town-
and
the
that's a
clerk.
good point. I just mentioned the board, we will table resolution number 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
For the clerk like to know.
okay.
That would be nice.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, I Xed that off on mine. All right, schedule public hearing for August 25th regarding transitional business uses special permit. We've gotten a draft law. I will be circulating it to the board regarding transitional business uses in the hamlet. It's the old zoning where we have zoning which is not consistent, and to allow some changes to those properties in between, say, a business or an industrial use as a residential use. So I will provide a draft of this law to the board early next week. I'd like to set the public hearing for August 25th, 2016. And so that gives the board plenty of time to contact either the attorney or the planner who drafted this up. So do I have a motion to schedule the public hearing for August 25th regarding transitional business uses special permit?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. That's it tonight for the resolutions. Now we go into budget transfers. Mark, do we have any budget transfers this evening?
Not tonight.
Okay, we have no budget transfers. All right, now is the part of the meeting where we take public comments. We take public comments on general town issues. If there's anybody like to speak on general town issues, now is the time.
Good evening. Lee Baker, Hillside Lake. At the June 9th Town Workshop meeting, abolishing Hillside Lake Park District was one of the topics of discussion. There was mention of the Hillside Lake Park District getting lawyers, as they had done when the Park District was formed. To my recollection, the town lawyers at that time were the lawyers who did the work for the Park District formation. I believe the Hillside Lake taxpayers paid for their services. Also mentioned at the workshop was the need for a plan. There is a plan. Before the Park District could be formed, there was a map, a 7-year plan, and a report presented to the town by Morris Associates Engineering Consultants, paid for by the taxpayers at Hillside Lake.
Yes.
There was also a detailed report on the conditions of the properties, including what repairs and upkeeps would be needed going forward. The Hillside Lake Clubhouse has since been demolished due to lack of repairs and upkeep. The concrete dam repairs and upkeep were not done until we were almost condemned by the New York State, and it's still in a state of disrepair. One item listed each year of the 7-year plan was to control algae and lily pad growth. The plan listed both chemical and mechanical removal, chemical removal was not a viable option. The mechanical removal was never done. Neglect by the town of East Fishkill elected officials through the years has led to the conditions that exist today. Another item mentioned at the workshop on June 9th was the dissolution of the Park District would create an increased tax burden to the town overall. How that might be brought to a referendum. Where was the referendum when the tax break was given IBM, Global Foundries, increased the tax burden to the public? I don't recall voting on that tax break. I do remember assimilating them in my tax bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple points I would just like to make. In 1990-91, there was a map plan and report. As the attorney said, the map plan and report was created for the formation of the Hillside Lake Special Park District, as that is how we do all of our special park districts. And yes, it was paid for by the residents of Hillside Lake. I cannot speak for why those things weren't done. One thing I would speak to, I know that, Mrs. Baker, you missed the one meeting in 2010. We did meet with a company from New Jersey that had proposed to do some removal of lily pads, the same company that Renewage is talking to presently. And we had thought, and I remember Councilman Koch was there. I remember Mad Jules was there. He's on the board at that time. I'm not sure whoever else was on the board. And we had thought we'd go forward at that time, and then was notified the next day that the Hillside Lake Board was not in favor at that time of going through with that. So that's understandable. That was their decision. As far as the tax breaks for Global Foundries and IBM, we never gave IBM or Global Foundries tax breaks. I believe New York State provided them tax breaks on probably labor for construction, purchasing construction equipment, materials, what have you. IBM and Global now actually pay us $8.3 million a year, and I don't believe that was a tax break. And now Global is on the assessment rolls, so it may not just stay $8.35 million a year. We were up at our max. I think IBM actually paid us $8.6 million a few years ago. So the town did not give them a tax break. Actually, there were public hearings held on the pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, contract we had with IBM, and unfortunately, which Global decided they didn't want to keep the pilot. But no, they paid their share. I believe they paid their share. Just to let you know. Believe me, we understand. I mean, I would like to see all that work had been done years ago. Absolutely. Had the lily pads been removed, we wouldn't have the growth we have these days. And I couldn't agree with you more. So, thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak on general town issues? Comment on general town issues?
I'd like to start off by actually apologizing if I came off harsh earlier, because I realize one of the reasons is, as I've said in the past, I come up here to represent a community, to speak, to voice the concerns of a community. And today when I walked out my door, my son was saying, "Daddy, please don't go, stay and play with me," and crying. But here I am. Okay, so I'm apologizing.
Understood. No, accepted.
For being
I appreciate
a little
that.
harsh to begin with. Nonetheless, here I am. While it's fresh in the memories, the weed harvesting that you mentioned that was offered to the Hillside Lake Board that was turned down, that was offered at the expense of the Hillside Lake
Oh,
community.
yes, it was.
It was $20,000 for, it was either 1 or 2 acres.
No, it was to be a pilot program, and we were going to allow so much, because you had built up a fund balance at that time. So the cash was already in place. Yes, and it came from the taxpayers of the
Right. So
Hillside Lake,
it was
which is the
felt-
special park district. But we had proposed a pilot program, because what we're trying to see is how much it will cost to do the entire lake. So we said to the gentleman, do what you can do in, I think we gave him like 5 days at that time. And that way, if he could do 5 days, then we could extrapolate from that, see what the cost of the entire lake would be.
But all in all, I mean, the bottom line is it was $20,000 that was to be a burden on only the homeowners, property owners of Hillside Lake. Whereas I believe the program you're looking at now with some other harvester, we're not looking to only to charge Hillside Lake.
No, well, right now, we're getting grants,
Right, right.
which takes a lot of the burden off the people in Hillside Lake.
Right. Piggybacking on what Mrs. Baker had mentioned about the July 9th workshop meeting, I was very disappointed with the way that was approached. I know that the Hillside Lake Board had reached out to you when they heard there was going to be a meeting, asking to have some representation there from the Hillside Lake community, to have a Hillside Lake resident at the very least. That was turned down. We asked Manny to approach you as well, which he did, and you turned that down.
Yep. Councilman Marinaro is your liaison. I felt he would be appropriate to represent any of your concerns.
Right, and we weren't aware of every topic you were going to talk about, every point you were going to try to make, so we wanted to have a actual community member there, not a liaison. Very shocking that you would not allow someone to sit there, being that a few months prior to that, you had an individual property owner sitting at the table at a workshop meeting discussing something that only affected them with your whole board, your whole council. And that, how does that seem
Okay, good
logical
point.
when you're talking about one single property owner discussing some drainage problem on their property versus 450 families and not allowing one person there to, who lives in that community, to represent those people?
Good point.
Okay. So here I am to set the record straight on a few things that were mentioned at that meeting, because to me, it seemed very orchestrated. It almost seemed like some of your council members had notes in front of them.
No, they didn't.
Precursor
Did you have
question.
notes in front of you? No,
It's
sorry.
just my opinion.
Understood.
Just my
No, they
opinion.
didn't. I can assure you of that.
But I want to set the record straight where there was quite a debate, I believe Mr. Cassidy started it, on that we need a plan of what to do with the park if it's dissolved, and we came to you and told you we want a park there, I believe was the basis of it, and then dissolution and all of this, or we wanted to dissolve it and we wanted the park there. To set the record straight, I stood up here for 45 minutes one day and proposed a plan to you. It was not a plan to dissolve the park district and then tell you to put, to dissolve the park district and then tell you to put parkland in there. We had sent, the Hillside Lake Board sent a petition to you for a sit-down meeting to discuss just what I had brought up here, discuss bringing much-needed public recreation to northern East Fishkill via the Hillside Lake common areas themselves.
Yes, we had a meeting here to that effect.
Yes. It went on to explain currently there's little to none seasonal recreation up there, and it gave a whole bunch of suggestions of what could be done
Yeah.
there.
And when we had our meeting here, you
this-
brought that, your team had brought that to the table
Yep.
a couple years ago. We had a town board workshop session here on that.
It brought-
And the town engineer even thought about it was a good idea. We discussed it. It would be something akin to, I believe, did we say it'd be about the same size as Leetown? Right. And then we asked you to go to the rec commission and get their input on it.
I believe your engineer and you were on board thinking it was a great idea to actually move Leetown because it was a great size to fit into Hillside Lake.
Excuse me, what was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Your engineer, and I believe you were in agreement with him, at least some council members
Yeah.
were, that moving Leetown to Hillside Lake.
Well, not to move,
was-
no, we have to leave Leetown on the
Well,
mountain. Yeah.
More like a
some-
template.
But it seemed like it fit. It
Something.
looked like the same kind
So-
of configuration. And then we suggested that you go to the
Right.
rec board.
And what I want to clarify is, there's no need for us to go to the rec board. It was a suggestion of what a town can do to bring recreation up there. We weren't saying, we want you to do this, and as Hillside Lake residents. This was an East Fishkill thing. This was for all of East Fishkill. There's
Right.
little to none recreation in northern East Fishkill, okay? On the heels of that suggestion, it was even here, and I can give you the petition that was handed to you, and I'll read it word for word, this portion here, that this is the petition from the Hillside Lake Board, just to try and get a meeting with you to discuss the possibility of this, that it is already understood that this would require dissolution of the Hillside Lake Park District as we know it today. We, the Hillside Lake Park District Advisory Board, are aware of this and in favor of it. Therefore, it's eminent importance that you keep us informed of any dissolution efforts should they take place. So, to summarize, we suggested, hey, here's Hillside Lake. There is hardly any recreation in the northern area.
Right.
Why don't you take Hillside Lake? You can have it. Put
Right.
recreation in it. But we understand we'll have to get rid of our park district, but that's the sacrifice we're
That's a-
willing to
yeah.
make.
But again, we're not the Recreation Board. We have a Recreation Board that oversees recreation in the town of East Fishkill. That's why we suggested that you would meet with them and see what they thought of the project. Maybe they had ideas what should be there, what shouldn't be there, because that's what they do.
It was a suggestion to the town council to
But
take it and
but
run
I
with it.
believe the town council suggested to you to go
All right,
bring
but
it to the...
we're just property owners, so,
No, you're representatives of Hillside Lake. You
Right.
brought it to us as
Right.
such.
Right.
And it would have been very proper for you to actually approach the rec board
well,
again.
all in all, well, it doesn't seem like it's happening anyway. So again, to clarify, where it was made a big deal that we had to make a proposal to you before any dissolution would take place, and we came to you with, something, and we have to move forward with that first,
Yeah.
that's not the case.
But why didn't you go to the rec board?
Dissolution is a whole separate issue.
Yeah, that's fine,
okay?
but
And
that-
we
but
brought
that-
it up again recently,
Yep.
without even mentioning this whole idea of putting a park there.
Right.
That we just want to dissolve the park district,
Right.
period. So there was no need to discuss and go on and how there has to be a plan, and it has to go before the rec board at this point.
But I do think there are two different issues here. I mean, we did ask you if you wanted to do the recreation to go to the rec board, and I think that would have been appropriate. But I believe if you want to do a dissolution, you have to have a plan for that also. Is that part of, you have the list, right, from the attorney? I thought it
I
said you had
do,
to have a plan.
absolutely. Yep.
Submit it, yeah.
That's what we're gonna do, that's the road
Okay,
we're gonna go down.
good. All right,
I said I want to make the record straight on that.
okay.
I have that Mr. Wood's information right here. Another thing I was disappointed with, and I still truly don't understand questioning, and I believe it was Councilman D'Alessandro who brought it up. Mr. Wood went through very clearly, and I thank you for that, putting together the steps need to be taken place there. And in the steps there, it said that, I'm paraphrasing, but the only votes that were required were from the property owners. It was property owners of Hillside Lake were the only ones that were required to vote on this and decide, yes, we want to do this and go forward with this proposal. After he finished, I believe it was Nick that brought up, well, what about the rest of East Fishkill that has to take on the burden of the maintenance tax of Hillside Lake? And Mr. Wood then mentioned that, along with a few other things, he basically, in word for word here, said that legislature would be more concerned with the Hillside Lake residents' desire. So it's not
Well-
required
Okay, but I would,
have the whole town vote on that.
yeah, I would say that I think the town board and any increase in any taxes, you talk about taxation without representation, every November, we have our budget hearings. And it's on all the budgets, it's on all the special districts, it's on everything. And before we can enact or raise a tax on any of the residents in the town of East Fishkill, we do have to have public hearings. So I think as representatives of the entire town, we are concerned about any tax impact to the rest of the town also.
As I would be concerned about an impact, a tax increase to myself.
Yep.
On that topic, at that meeting, you asked Mr. Posniak how much the tax was for Hillside Lake, and he said it's approximately $1,500 per year. That's combined. That's the maintenance.
I don't know, is that,
The cost of maintaining Hillside Lake District, not necessarily the tax, is $1,500 to $2,000.
Oh,
Hillside
year.
Lake residents pay altogether,
Yes,
it totals out to approximately $1,500. Just
Correct.
So
Okay.
we're clear.
yeah.
So the tax burden, as you call it, that would be put on the rest of East Fishkill would be divvying up $1,500. Okay? So.
can I
said-
just interrupt 1 second?
Sure.
Assuming nothing else changes,
Right.
to be clear.
Right. As it is right now. We're not asking for other changes other than get fix what was been destroyed. So, on that $1,500, did a little research on my own. $1,500 Hillside Lake tax, broken out over all of the East Fishkill parcels that are taxable. comes out to, let me get this right, let me start, 0.038 cents. Not 3 cents.
Point zero?
0.038 cents per thousand,
Okay.
okay? Mm-hmm. And I can break that down, at a $200,000 parcel, that will be 8 cents per year.
Yep.
400,000 would be 15 cents per year. $600,000 parcel would be 23 cents per year, and $1 million parcel would be 39 cents per year. Okay? You kept mentioning, hey, what if it's $50,000? We'd have to divide that up. It's $1,500, and these are the numbers. So for the average house in East Fishkill, you're talking 10 cents or less per year.
Okay.
But you also said also to fix what was broken, right?
That,
Is
you
that what
guys
you
are
said?
still under contract, for lack of a better term, to do,
So,
per taking on the Park District.
so your reason to dissolve the Park District is to dissolve the Park District and then have the rest of the town pay to fix the lake?
No, you guys are still responsible to pay for it either way.
Yeah, but
We
we
don't have
don't,
to pay- we don't have to
we
pay for
pay
what the
in our
town did.
taxes just like you, we're residents
but-
also.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's the fault of your predecessors, and yourself included.
No, I
because
understand that,
what's
but
going
that's
on.
why I'm asking. So the reason to dissolve the Park District is then the rest of the town will pick up the burden of the paying to fix the lake.
Did I say that?
No, but I'm trying to get clarity.
Okay, the reason to dissolve the Park District, and it's been said many times up here, is there is no recreational value whatsoever, and we are paying for the recreational use of the Hillside Lake Park District.
Okay.
There is no need for a Park District anymore.
If the lake was improved, would that be any reason? I mean, if it was improved, I mean, I don't, like I said, I'm sorry that we couldn't get our money to do the big dredge project, but it was improved, then it would be a value to your park district. Then do you think it would be a
I think it
value?
would be the same value as without having a Park District. Personally speaking, I don't think we need a Park District there. There's no gate stopping anyone from coming in. There's nobody policing who's coming in or out.
Okay.
There's signs up that say you're not supposed to be in here, but,
The gate's locked down at the beach. I couldn't get in there last week, but,
well.
all right. Just so, okay.
So again, to emphasize.
Yep.
We're talking, if we dissolve the Park District, the tax burden, as it was called, of $1,500 total per year would come out to, on average, 10 cents per parcel in East Fishkill of an increase. Now, would you vote on that, a 10-cent tax increase? Would you really put that to a vote?
Well, no, we have to, I believe, as part of the budget. We vote on, for lights, 1 penny of an increase. We have to bring them
Mr. Wood
out.
broke it out, that it only requires the vote of the Park District for dissolution.
We'd have to look
I
into
said that
that.
would be what the legislature, remember, has to go to
Right.
Albany. And that if there was, they would probably
Potentially,
definitely
they
want
could
the
come-
voters of the Park District, but it could be others.
Right.
And that would be, you know.
If
debate
they
to the
say so.
legislature.
Right. Otherwise, you did say it's up to the town if they want to put it to a vote.
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing this up.
Just
and I
like
wanna
any time, if the town were going to borrow money for anything in the town, it's subject to referendum. Okay.
So that's why I want to emphasize, should it come to a vote of all of East Fishkill that take on the quote-unquote burden of the $1,500 for maintenance
Right.
for what at that time would no longer possibly be Hillside Lake, it would just be public area for anybody to come into, on average, is 10 cents or less
Okay.
per year. Okay? With that in mind, where was the vote when we purchased the Lime Kiln Recreation Center? Was that voted on?
It was subject to permissive referendum, as.
Would have
Okay.
been 2000 and when?
So the acquisition of.
Okay.
You know, I don't think the issue, in my opinion, is so much the ongoing maintenance that's there now. I think the issue is what's to become of the facility, whether it be in the Park District or general town property. The town board or the rec commission, whatever, might find that they don't want to use the lake as a recreational
Fine.
facility, in which case it would stay. Many of our other recreational facilities in the town have come about in different manners. The Leetown field that you're speaking of, that was part of the development up there. The developer dedicated the property. It was recently renovated with a $150,000 grant from New York City because it's in the New York City watershed. So that's how many of the infrastructure things were done there. Emmerdine Pond down the road here was dredged based on money that was paid by the Wildflower Development when that came in.
Yeah, but
So
there was also
obvious-
highway equipment in that dredging. Highway trucks were down there dredging as well.
Okay, but the bulk of the money cost was from, I think it was $500,000 that came from the Wildflower developer.
right.
So
And also-
obviously with Hillside Lake, if it was a general town asset and a development went in the area or something like that, and the
Well-
developer wanted to contribute money towards cleanup, might be a way to do it. But then you also have to balance it with the fact that there are houses right around the lake, and I don't know how many residents who live there, and this is when we had the meeting 10 years ago in Van Wyck Middle School. The concern, one of the options that was proposed there was
Put a
to
walkway
make the
around.
lake smaller, make
Yeah.
a walking path around, and there was quite a pushback from the residents who were the property owners
There
around
actually-
the lake.
One person mentioned it.
Well, there was pushback. There were many comments given to us.
Yeah, that was,
Okay, but you know
So,
what?
I mean, those were all things that...
It's not up to those 40 residents that live around the lake. There are 900 people or so living in that community.
And as a park district, they
That's
control...
where it comes down to a vote of those people.
Right.
And if they're outnumbered, they're outnumbered. I mean, I can drive a canoe up to somebody's property line, and they can't do anything about it, so what's the difference if somebody's sitting on a park bench there? But that's a whole other topic, and that falls into where I said, you guys do what you want with it. Here's a suggestion: make it recreational, make it for fishing, put an ice skating rink, a basketball court, whatever.
okay.
Here's some land. Let's bring some recreation to northern East Fishkill. It was a suggestion
We
for
thought
you
it was-
guys.
yeah.
To expand our horizons here and get something up north for people, so they don't have to travel so far. So back to what I was questioning here on the Lime Kiln Recreation Center. I wanted to do a cost comparison here because this 10-cent tax burden that we're potentially looking at if we dissolve Hillside Lake might really be a burden on people when you compare it to Lime Kiln, which approximately, I could be off, the total tax, it's costing us about $68,000 a year, I believe.
It's probably something like that.
Yeah.
You take the
Yeah.
lights out of
And
the recreation.
To quote
They get,
Councilman D'Alessandro, it's only $68,000 a
yeah.
year, he said.
No, but you have to consider, you have the fields there, you have teams play there. We get about
I'm
1,200.
talking about the building.
And yes, let me finish. We get about 1,200 people a month use the building, so it does get a bit of use there. So, when you talk about the total, I'm not sure what the building itself would be, but we get about 1,200 people a month that use
All
that
right,
building.
that's a good analogy, actually. I like that, because you got 1,200 people using that building.
Mm-hmm.
You have over 900, so close to 1,200 people living in Hillside Lake.
Right.
Okay, so 10 cents for Hillside Lake.
The lake and all the facilities started out as a homeowners association.
So you have
And
1,200 people
one
approximately.
of the motivations,
I mean,
could I?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I said the facilities that are at Hillside Lake started out owned as a homeowners association. And for the benefit of all the homes, as you indicated, it's in everybody's deed that they had the right to use it. The problem was the residents there didn't want it or
I understand.
didn't
I completely
contribute.
understand the history.
So then the Park District was created as the mechanism to continue some of the work. Whether it's done exactly what everybody wanted, it certainly was a thought to change from the homeowners association, which had very few people contributing at one point, and moving it along, so.
Yep, I fully understand that. It's been said many times. So back to the Lime Kiln Recreation Center, at $68,000 a year tax burden to all of the people in East Fishkill, including the people in Hillside Lake, including everybody that lives far away from it and would never go there.
Well, people could go there. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
that they
it's
can't
far
go
away,
there.
okay? Let's do a cost comparison. Costs $68,000 a year. So that comes down to, let's see, a $200,000 parcel, that's $3.51 a year. $1 billion parcel is $17.56. So on average, we're talking $4.20 compared to 10 cents. Okay?
Right, but
I
what do you
just
get
wanted to
for your,
make a-
for your 10 cents? What do you get?
Well, that's up to you. What are you going to do with what can you do with it?
Well,
You have an
if you're at-
opportunity.
Now, but
This is what I'm saying. You have an opportunity to
we
take
haven't,
something
well,
and
just let
make
me
it
just.
great.
Okay. Now, but your 10 cents disappears if we start putting money into it.
Just like
Say you
just like
put-
you develop anywhere.
Exactly.
Just like you put money
exactly.
into that.
So actually, your 10 cents per house is, who knows what it would be by the time the project is done.
Right, but just
Okay.
like you spend $68,000, $68,000 a year on that,
Hmm?
and less than 1,200 people actually use that.
Yes,
but-
no, we have actual accounts because people sign in.
Okay, but, I mean, it would be the same thing. Here it is. Do you want to make it great, or do you not?
Okay.
It's being handed to you. Okay, I wanted to clarify that part on it. And I just also want, like I said, make clear that where you were talking $50,000 and a big burden of tax on the East Fishkill
It
residents,
is.
if we were to do that, at this current moment,
Right.
it would be, on average, 10 cents.
Okay.
Not even a half of a penny per thousand,
Right.
Okay.
At this time.
okay? So, continuing with that same meeting, near the end of your discussion about the dissolution, Manny had mentioned to you that he thought it would be good for you all to attend an upcoming community meeting that Hillside Lake is having on July 11th. And that was on June 9th, you had that meeting, and Manny suggested that would be a good idea for you to come, for the council members to come there and can answer some more questions about this dissolution perhaps, being there was nobody present when you weren't taking questions. It was just a workshop meeting. So I sent out to each and every one of you up there, including Tom Wood, a email invitation, stating it was a follow-up to Mr. Marinaro's suggestion at that meeting for each of you to attend the upcoming Hillside Lake Community Meeting. I'd like to formally invite each and every one of you, with plenty of time in advance, to attend our quarterly meeting on July 11th at 7 p.m. sharp, and as you know where it is. And I furthered with, this would be a perfect opportunity for you to hear firsthand from the portion of the Hillside Lake community who do not attend town board meetings. Without further ado, again, this is a formal invitation. I listed each and every one of you on here. I gave you what it is, where it is, what time it is. Please RSVP by the following Friday. Councilman Marinaro has responded to me within hours, I believe. I was sent on a Friday. I didn't expect responses until the next week, knowing the weekend was there. Councilman Franco responded on Monday, following that he would be there. We got no further responses, not even a thank you for the invite. I have something else planned. Sorry, I can't make it. No, I don't want to come, or anything to that nature. How do you, a community invited you to come to their meeting. It's an open meeting, first of all. You can come anytime. But being you just had a meeting about Hillside Lake without allowing any questions and answers, how do you not respond to that, to a community? This wasn't me asking you to come to my birthday party. This is a community.
Oh, I understand that.
Asking you to come to see what our meetings are and possibly get questions that you might not have the answer to, but you can come back with them.
Yep.
Or just see a part of the community that can't make it to these meetings.
Oh, we've had public meetings with Hillside Lake community. I remember back in 2010, we had several. I remember the Van Wyck one. It definitely sticks out in my mind. And they weren't always the most collegiate, but they were meetings, and we did exchange thoughts. I put it that way. I'd like to see if the Hillside Lake Board, yourself and your representatives, do come up with a plan from your community. I'd be really happy to see it. I think it'd be a great thing. But I have entertained Hillside Lake meetings here at the Fire Training Center, at the Van Wyck Junior High School. Yeah, we invited people. We invited people.
Are you done?
Yeah, and I recall my experiences, Mr. DeMassa.
Are you done with your thought?
I'm just
I don't wanna
commenting.
interrupt. I'm just
I'm
saying,
just
are you-
commenting that,
okay.
yes.
My question was, this is directed to yourself, Councilman Cassidy, Councilman D'Alessandro, and Tom, I didn't expect you to come. I put you in there as a courtesy. Fine.
I will pass, thank you.
Okay, so you refuse to answer my question.
No, I just said I'll pass on the invitation, thank you very
Just, I
much.
mean, did you all receive it?
I didn't,
I did get it,
Okay.
and Tom and I talked about it, and I didn't really realize that date is, for the RSVP was over, but I cannot tell you right now what I'm doing July 11th. If I am available, I told Tom I'd go with him. But I
Okay.
can't tell you what's going on July 11th right now in my business, my line of work.
That's why I gave plenty of advance notice, knowing that people have busy things on their agenda. Nick, I would assume you got it and you didn't.
I didn't, I don't know if I got it. I don't remember getting it, but I did write a note on my agenda here when you first mentioned it. Check my spam, because I don't remember getting it, so
Okay.
I will check again.
Came from hillsidelakeboard@gmail.com.
Okay.
And anytime you want to send anything to that email, it goes to all the Hillside Lake board members. Gets distributed out to all of them. It doesn't go to only one of us. Just the final thing on this workshop meeting, since you discussed Hillside Lake there at the dissolution, since you showed us that we can have a individual property owner up there to openly discuss their individual concerns, I would like to take this time to request that you have the Hillside Lake Board, and maybe some Hillside Lake residents as well, at another workshop meeting to start with the history of Hillside Lake.
to start with the history of
Start
Hillside Lake.
with the history of
But-
Hillside Lake, just a
We've been
bullet
through
point
this.
rundown, because
okay.
as we know, and I've mentioned, a lot, people have come up here and said, I'm sick of hearing of Hillside Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the public needs to be educated as to why we're up here always talking about Hillside Lake. And that's not a put down to say educate them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean it in that way. Be informed. I think there's a lot of information that they're not aware of, the history of it. And I think it would be good to sit down and have some, or a separate televised
Okay.
meeting where we can go down and just, hey, this is 1930. Mr. Johnson had a farm,
Right,
and bring it up to today where we are and what's going on.
okay, that's a reasonable request.
Clean and concise. So, so
Stop.
if you could please write to
Yeah, no,
Hillside Lake
that's a
Board at
reasonable
Gmail.
request. We're not having any workshop meetings the next couple months.
Okay,
so-
well, please take this
We'll
as
have
a
to take a
formal
look.
request. I would like it to be noted on this date, I am requesting this as a Hillside Lake Board member to do this and get all this information out there in one shot instead of me coming up here or Keith coming up here and giving little bits and pieces. Lastly, interesting thing, Friday, I was out to dinner and someone approached me and said, hey, I saw you on Channel 22. And I said to myself, oh, great, because I didn't know what kind of response I was going to get from this person. So I said, are you talking about the town board meetings? He said, yeah, I saw you at the podium. And he had two questions for me, and I figured I can't answer them, so I'm going to bring them here and ask you to answer them. And I know you always say that I come here with answers and expect immediate answers. Last time I was up here, I came with questions that I had been asking for over a year, some of them, so it wasn't immediate questions. And I understand this is two questions that I'm not expecting an immediate answer.
Okay.
Maybe next week, or next week in the comments from the
Yeah, what are they?
advisor.
What are they?
First thing he said to me is, what is wrong with Mr. Hickman? And then he followed that immediately with, why doesn't he answer your questions?
Okay. I could,
Doesn't
ponder
live in
that for a
Hillside
moment.
Lake.
No, I'd like to respond to that. I would like to
Fine.
respond to that. You know, and I understand, you know, your focus is Hillside Lake. It really is Hillside Lake. You come up, you talk about Hillside Lake all the time. Hillside Lake, and we all know the history. And it's always Hillside Lake, what are you doing? And you have a lot of questions, a lot of points to be made. Be honest with you, in the town of East Fishkill, there's a lot of things going on besides Hillside Lake. We have very major projects. We have an EPA Superfund site down the road. We're working to that. And just to point out, there's a lot of things going on. So at the end of my day, if they say, what's wrong with Mr. Hickman? Sometimes it's a very long day. Often it just runs right into this. So, you know, I understand the Hillside Lake focus of yours, but there's a lot more to this town than just Hillside Lake. Why I don't answer your questions, some of the questions I can answer, some of them I don't. Sometimes we don't get into a question and answer, we get into more of a debate. And at this time of the night, I'd rather not have a debate. If it was a simple question, like you asked like we asked the controller, how much is spent on Hillside Lake budget per year? And Mark said $1,500 to $2,000. That's a simple, you ask a question, and there's an answer. And that's fine. The debates I'm not really thrilled with. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things happening in this town besides Hillside Lake.
Okay, well, I hope they're watching, and I hope they have their answer, because I don't know the person, I don't know where they live.
And I hope
If
they, I hope
actually
they,
live on
I hope they have
Carpenter
the answer too.
Road. Okay. And, no, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll try not to be redundant. We didn't compare notes, so some are of the same nature. One thing that I'd like to dovetail right away is regarding the 10 cents per $200,000, or the medium household in Hillside Lake raised tax. And Mr. Hickman, you said something like, what would it do for Hillside Lake? I'm told that you drove through the neighborhood yesterday or the day before, and I was wondering if you had noticed how many homes are for sale in there. And that keeps on increasing because the market is becoming saturated. One of the things that I am very concerned of as a Hillside Lake owner, occupant, is the deterioration of the lake and the value of my home. So to answer your question, what would the improvement of Hillside Lake do for East Fishkill? It would start increasing the property values and thereby increasing your tax revenue. That's one thing that I want to
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
What would you like to see with the lake? Are you okay with the project that's being proposed as much as you know now?
Negative.
Okay, thank you.
I could elaborate on that. I don't think that you wanted to use this venue for that purpose.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll try not to be redundant, but in the June 9th meeting, Nick inquired with Mr. Wood about soliciting the entire town for embracing ownership of the Hillside Lake Park District. I remember after the meeting, or during the meeting, with all the councilmen and yourself, and I believe Mr. Bryant was present, May of 2015, I believe it was. And Nick said at that meeting that he wanted to poll his constituents or his customers or whomever to get an idea of their desire. And sometime after that, in this same venue, Nick was counting who he polled. So I presume he did poll any of the above that I just mentioned. And he was counting off, and I think he got somewhere between 5 and 10. And it was so dramatically suspenseful, I thought he was counting by tens. So I think Nick never really did poll anybody possibly beyond the other side of his counter, because I would really like to know what the true pulse is of what he found out with all that polling, 7 of them or whatever it was.
No, I don't remember the polling like you said, but I have many people call me and ask me about what happens at the town board meetings. How come there's so many Hillside Lake people that go up there? They're always complaining. I give them a brief description about what's going on at the lake and that it's a park district and that it's very difficult because the town can't spend town-wide taxpayer dollars on a park district. And they says, well, we hope, some people say, we hope that never becomes part of the town. Because,
I can only-
Excuse me. So that's my concern also, of not only the residents of Hillside Lake, and like you said, maybe 7 or 10 people tell you something. I only hear from 1, 2, 3 people here from Hillside Lake, maybe 4 or 5. I don't hear from the 400 homes.
Why
from
don't you go through
Lake.
Hillside Lake and solicit Hillside Lake homeowners?
Well, if they are so concerned, they would come to a meeting or they would call you, just
We
like other
invited
people
you
would
to our
too.
meeting. You never even responded.
I never responded to what?
The invitation to our meeting.
I just told him. I wrote it down that I don't know if I saw the email or it went to my spam, and I will look. But that's why I question it, because other residents who are concerned about paying for things for Hillside Lake ask things to me, and I have answers sometimes for them, sometimes I don't.
Well, I mean, I can only go by your appearance at the June 9th meeting, what the emotion is in your response to the people that you poll or the people that call you and tell you they hope that they never have to pay for Hillside Lake. I hope from now on you tell them it only costs you 10 cents a year.
Well, it'll cost you 10 cents just for your taxes, but like I explained to your friend there, he said, what about fixing what was broken? So that will have a cost also.
that's it.
Will it not have a cost? I don't know. Will it have a cost?
Well, it's
Yeah,
going to have a
of course
cost
it
one
will.
way or another.
Of course,
I can only
yes.
say to you, your constituents who reside in Hillside Lake, if that cost is so astronomical, what do you think that it'll do to the backs of the people that live in Hillside Lake?
That's why this board has tried tirelessly to get grants and everything else, and we've acquired a small grant, which hopefully will help certain things, and we get resistance even for the grant that we got.
Those grants will be no less effective whether it's shared in
How
utilization by
could you
the
say
whole.
that? Are you an expert to know everything that's going to happen
No,
with the
just-
work that's
yeah,
going to happen at the
yeah,
grant,
no.
at the lake?
And just one second, Nick, if I may, and I know, as we're saying, you know, the 10 cents or whatever per household, as the lake stands now, obviously, if there's improvements, and there will be, that number will no longer be relevant. I do hear from people also, when I'm out and about, that some people are not in favor of paying for a tax for Hillside Lake. I talk to Hillside Lake people that I know, because I know quite a few people in Hillside Lake, you know, and they're okay with paying, you know, because they've been paying through the homeowners association. I don't think we've charged anything the last few years. We've charged a little bit. We went a few years without charging anything.
At the Hillside Lake Board request,
yeah,
the levy has been zero for the past 3
Yeah,
years.
it's been right, yeah.
Because there was an abundance of
Yeah.
funds in that fund, in the
Yeah,
Hillside Lake
but
Park
what I
District
say,
Fund.
we're trying not to charge anybody, you know, needlessly.
That was at our request.
I'm sorry?
That was at our request
No, I
for
think
there to be no
we've
levy.
tried that in the past, though, Keith. I've talked to the
Well-
controller in the past. But just to the point, you know, some people are, yes, they'd pay for Hillside, like some people know. Some of the people in the district have been in the special park district, and they really didn't seem to have a problem because they had paid in the past. So, you know, I just like to point that out. And so you don't think these grants are really worth the effort? I mean,
I
don't know.
absolutely think, I was extremely
Yeah.
disappointed that the $2 million grant, we
Me too.
probably wouldn't be here having this exchange.
Oh,
It would not change
I
my
can guar-
opinion.
Yeah.
It would not have changed my opinion about dissolving the park district.
Okay.
As previously stated, there is no recreational value whatsoever there now.
Understood.
And understanding that we don't want to implement a heavy tax burden on the Park District
No.
residents because some may not be able to afford it. That's why we try to get so many grants. And you understand that. We've discussed this 100 times.
Of course I understand
So for you to say what you said, it doesn't make, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to
Well,
me.
you're coming across with what you're saying as if there is something imminent, that there is some sort of monumental expenditure that is imminent. I don't know, do you know what that is?
No, but I know that down the road, that if there's going to have to be costs to remediate that lake.
And perhaps we'll get a grant, won't we?
Yeah,
No, I don't think
absolutely.
we will, to be honest with
Absolutely.
you.
I would
I
try
can't tell
again.
you what
Well,
we
then
went,
what do we have to hope for in Hillside Lake if you absolutely don't think that we're going to get another
we
grant?
got one grant, I think we'll get the 128,000, but I just can't tell you what we went through for that $2 million grant. I mean, we went through heck.
And I
We
told you
really
in the
did.
past more than once that we appreciate your efforts to secure those
You know, you
grants.
did say that.
May I,
We-
may I,
Just let me just finish, Manny, though. And that's why we're trying to get grants. Obviously, I mean, if this is futile effort, I don't know. You know, we'd like to get a grant, we'd like to do the harvesting of the lily pads, we'd like to have the filter system in. And then there obviously would be some maintenance to that. Highway would take care of the stormwater portion, but the filtering part of the lake would be something that would be borne by either the people in the district.
And that is exactly where we differ, what you said last.
Okay. And I know that, and part of the problem is that I know that, you know, you don't feel like the people in the district should pay for it.
I will reserve my comments for July 6th.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just, while you're standing over there, I want to make a point that while we're talking about, again, the issue of paying for certain services, the town lawyer brought up to our attention tonight something very important, that other parts of the town, including the pond that is right over here on 376, was paid for by construction company that did projects. Now, so that we all know what we're talking about here, there's been construction going on around the Hillside Lake. And I know that probably not the, part of this board was involved when those projects went on. But if I were part of that administration at the time, I would have asked and request that part of the proceeds of, while these projects approval were going on, is to go to remediate, because some of those projects approval, their drainage right now drains in Hillside Lake. And the project, I'm not going to mention name, just happened less than 10 years ago. So the bottom line over here is that there's been negligence. We spoke about this before. And while at a certain point, the town has addressed the issue and taken care of certain ponds. What is the name of the pond that we have?
Amadine Pond.
Amadine. These people over here, they have not had a representative represent them at the time that it was needed. So there has been negligence. And again, I don't want to point fingers at who was doing or not doing their job at the time. That's not for me to say. But while we're talking about costs, again, there is an issue of negligence on somebody's part, not addressing the issue when these projects were presented through the different boards.
It would have been the planning board.
Right,
And
yes.
that's where it would have happened. It would have gone to the planning board.
Correct.
They would have performed their
But-
Quality Review Act, and they would have said, this is an impact to Hillside Lake, and the planning board
Right.
may have in
Right,
their
and,
discretion.
and also, the town board advising them to address the issue of how much of an impact the draining of these.
Well, that's
No, the
not a-
town board wouldn't
not a-
address the
that's a
planning board.
issue.
It's a separate
No, no,
board.
but we could make suggestions to look
No,
over.
you don't.
Firewall, Councilman, no.
What I'm saying over here, Nick, is that through the reviews, like the town lawyer said, it just gave you an history of what happened in other parts of the town. Yeah, And but- now there's,
New York State, we can ask for money for recreation, development. That's all we can do in New
no, you
York State.
can't.
Yes,
Well,
you can.
when Tom
Yes, you
comes
can.
in, we're gonna ask what
Legally-
happened.
Legally,
He's
in
stepped
other
out.
states, you can ask for other money. If they decide they want to donate land to help their
Now,
cause.
let me ask you, let me interrupt. If I own property next to your house, and I want to put a development next to your house,
Yep.
I have no authority to drain my
I
water
agree, you
in your
have no-
backyard.
Right.
That's the
But-
bottom line.
But you're talking, we're not talking water, we're talking money. You want money from them.
No,
To
no,
help
I don't want
yes,
money.
To reclaim the lake.
I don't want money, but the lake should have been taken care of. If somebody's putting a development with 50 homes, 70 homes,
Yep.
okay, and drains part of the water into the lake. I mean, Tom is here now. Tom, I'm sorry, something that you said previously, we were discussing now.
when you said about how Amadine Pond got
Right.
we're discussing now that there's been projects that went on in probably in the last 10 years where they're draining water in the lake right now. And
Well, you see, but MS4 started, you know, and there's more control and regulation over it. Amadine Pond, the money, we went back, because it came up as an issue, we went back through the environmental review, and they contributed that money as their part of having the town board give them the density that they got.
that's what I'm talking about. So we could
So,
have had,
as
guy
I
had a
said,
10-lot
if there was another
subdivision.
development in the Hillside Lake area that came in, and, you know, money could be gotten perhaps from the developer to do something like that.
right. So we missed the boat at that junction.
Which projects, I'm sorry, which-
Well, I'm not gonna mention the name, we'll talk.
I'll mention the names, Shagbark Drive and Marie
Shag Park was-
Court.
That was
and Marie
before
Court.
stormwardwater regulations.
Yeah.
A lot
The
most
fact of the
them-
matter is, it's still town stormwater that drains what
I'm not-
repeatedly
I'm
gets
not-
called a private lake. And Hillside Lake has to bear the brunt of that.
all right, so you're, just so I'm clear, you're saying Shagbark drains into Hillside Lake, a portion of it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll look.
Marie Court does,
Okay.
and as we all know, so does part of
Rolling Green?
Rolling Green.
Yeah, my understanding on Marie Court is the rain that hits the land, the watershed cutoff runs through the land portion, so what falls into the woods may run to Hillside Lake, but the paved portion runs to a pond down
Okay.
on Hillside Lake.
It still was approved plan by the town.
But
Well,
whether
still
those
is a-
houses are there or not, the water that hits the land
You know, I think we have to be clear.
is going to flow there.
Every house that was built after a certain date went through a process and is approved by the town. So you have a category of homes before that that were built without the requirement. I'm not saying anything's illegal, but they were built because the town didn't require planning board review. Then there came a point in time when planning board review was necessary. Then, over the years, you used to be able to come in and get a subdivision, and there was no environmental review done. Then the state legislature brought that in the 80s, and then that's been expanded over the years, and it's through that mechanism that all of these issues, stormwater and runoffs and everything, started to be recognized. And then it was only, I'm going to say 6, 7 years ago, when the EPA forced the state to start the whole stormwater system, which
I'm
you're very
familiar.
much aware of.
Yes.
So, you know, you have to look at, you talk about flows of water, and I'm sure water is flowing into the lake from elsewhere, all over town.
Given
There's-
everything that you just said, excuse me, I'm familiar with what you're
Yes.
describing, but given everything that you're referring to, that being MS4,
Right.
it is New York State DEC regulation.
Right.
Okay? And we're talking about stormwater remediation with the Renewage project.
Right.
And now we're off on something else regarding a portion of stormwater remediation and some filtration that might rejuvenate some of the water, but by the time
for
it
grant.
discharges,
Well,
it doesn't do anything for Hillside
Because DEC
Lake.
was interested in giving a grant for that type of opportunity. And with grants, and in municipalities, when you get grants, if you take a grant like this and you build it and you're successful, it opens the door to additional grants from, DEC loves to see very successful projects. And while you might think this is not going to do much or whatever, I think it is going to do something with the water and treatment, but it's going to be the beginning, I think, of interesting DEC and other agencies in continuing the process.
Point.
Now, we know with the FEMA grant that we're all very disappointed in, that had to do with the rate of release of water and damages downstream,
Aye.
at least through our hazard
one-
mitigation plan.
that one got complicated,
That we
too.
did in Lake City now. Some of the homes are being offered to be purchased by the federal government, and they're offering to raise it. Now, that all came about by starting with a grant to get a study, to get the information and progress. So, you know,
Those are all great stories, Mr. Wood, Tom.
It's a
But I
beginning,
think we
though.
could agree
It's a
that the
beginning.
existence of Hillside Lake, with the existence of Hillside Lake, the town also is a beneficiary. Would we agree on that?
yeah, but Hillside Lake is an area that was developed before any of the regulations I just spoke
I
of.
realize that.
It was
but-
started as a
But
summer
the residents
community.
in Hillside Lake
Right.
bear the brunt of the expenditure of maintaining it.
What is
And
the-
we get no
But they did when it was a
recreational
homeowners
use out of it.
association for all
I
the years.
realize that, but the drainage has exponentially increased into Hillside Lake also.
Those
And there
roads-
is
those
no
roads-
monitoring of what is going into Hillside Lake.
But the roads were originally private roads. They were built by the
Every road in the
developer.
town was. Every road in the town once was.
That's right, and then over the right of use and
Okay.
189 roads. So that doesn't mean that there was a design for each road, and then over the years, drainage systems were put in to help the residents, and obviously, depending upon when that was done, it would have met different requirements at different times. So we're not going to be able to go back and fix all of this in one swoop.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we've exhausted that point.
I would agree.
We're okay with that.
Okay. Bottom line is, I think you would find Hillside Lake residents eager to dissolve the Park District.
Okay.
Now, I'd like to refer back to the June 9th meeting on another comment that was made, that Peter said turning the property, turning over the property. He wouldn't sign a blank check, I think was the wording that was used. And he said, and then the town could do whatever they want, so he wouldn't sign that blank check. That is exactly what the town is doing right now, whatever they want.
No. I said, if I was a resident in that town.
I agree you said
and
that.
Believe it or not, since that meeting, a lot of people from your neighborhood, if you want to call it your neighborhood, Hillside Lake in that area, said, what will be done with it in the end? And I said, I can't tell you. And they said, for $3 a year, I wouldn't give that to you. They
Where's
want to
three?
know the end result. What's it cost you a year? How much would we say, $2,000 a year? How many houses in that? How many parcels?
400, something.
Okay, 400 divided by 2,000, that's $4 on average. They said, I would pay $4 a year out of my own pocket before I just turn it over to the
Well,
town.
line them up and let
do
them
what they
pay
want.
mine too, because it isn't $4 a year, okay? At one time, I believe it was $60 or $70 a year at one time.
Depending on what you're
And by the
doing.
way, I believe you misspoke after that meeting and told somebody Hillside Lake doesn't pay any taxes. And now, this is third hand that I'm saying this,
Yeah,
so
you
forgive
pay
me if
for
I
the
stand
mowing.
correction.
Well, they don't pay
Okay.
they don't pay any park district tax because you asked for it to be zero, so maybe that's what he meant.
Only on account of what is currently in the overfunded account.
But if we
pays
had
for the
that, but if that
expenditures as we go
overfunded
along
account
now.
still existed, there would be money
It
towards
does still
more work.
exist. It still exists,
You're using it to abate maintenance costs.
correct.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean we don't pay taxes. We did pay taxes.
Yeah, you paid taxes since the inception of the district.
Correct.
And you paid varying rates of taxes early on when you had to pay for,
We paid significantly. I believe if you did the accounting, and again, Peter, this is for your information, I believe it's in the neighborhood of $300,000 that the Park District has
But they used to
contributed.
pay a lot, because they used to,
Well, they used to do a lot of survey, they used to do a lot of planning, Morris Associates got a lot of that, and nothing ever got done. And you of all people up there should know that.
well,
You've been here the longest, you should know that.
no, I know that.
no, when I took office, I remember Morris Associates, we had a big meeting with the engineers at the time, and they wanted to go over all the projects that they were working on. And one of them being Hillside Lake, and they said, we're ready to get a permit. I said, well, what are you going to do? We're going to dredge the lake. I said, okay.
Multiple permits we
Yeah,
paid
and I
for.
said to him, I said, how much is this going to cost? He said, we're going to charge the district. I said, how much? And they were talking millions of dollars. And
I believe the
my,
price tag was $200,000 at the time.
no. What's that? I'm sorry, Keith.
I
What-
believe it was $200,000.
No, to dredge the lake back 2005, 2006, no.
Well, there was an individual who lives nearby who was willing to take the
Yeah,
dredging
but
at
that
the
was going to
time.
be the hydraulic dredge, and that was no $200,000. That's back when the farmer was going to take it.
Well, he was going to take it for
But Keith,
free.
and that created a big problem because then you had 90,000 yards. Yeah, but my point was, Morris wanted to go ahead and do this project back in '06, and my biggest concern was they were going to do this project on the backs of the people in Hillside Lake, and it was just going to happen all over again. And I think you and I have had that conversation. We don't want to just spend money and just have it come back 10 years later and be a mess again, so.
Well,
No, I understand. And, yeah, you guys have paid from the inception of the district, varying degrees. Some years, yes, you paid lots, some years you didn't pay that much, some years you paid nothing.
Okay.
But you've always paid.
But if I could, to that point about the project and taking it close by, I remember looking through the file when they did the sampling of the
Yeah.
material. I think it was nickel or some other metal.
Cadmium or nickel, yep.
That's what
And
killed it.
subsequently, DEC changed
Yes.
those specs, and we're going to allow it.
Yes,
Some
they
years
did.
later, or 10 years later, but by then the ship had sailed.
I don't
Yeah.
think it was all of 10 years.
It was quite a while, yeah.
Okay, well,
It was
fact of the matter is, it
unfortunate.
became acceptable.
Because that would have been a perfect scenario.
I seem to remember the prices being 1.5 to 3 million, depending on what the
Yeah.
project was.
We met with the dredge guy twice, I think, the hydraulic dredge guy. But, yeah, that was the problem. Where were we going to put it?
Okay, that wraps up what I wanted to say. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll give a little more consideration to the dissolving. I don't think that it is such a burden on the entire town.
Okay.
And please stop making it look like,
Stop what?
stop, not you, not, I wish the negative talk about dissolving the Park District
Well, I
would
do
stop.
appreciate the civil conversation tonight with the members of Hillside Lake.
See you July 6th.
Can I just add one more thing, Keith?
Oh, here it goes.
Yes, one more thing, sorry. But something that you said, that in the past, you've always noticed that nothing ever gets done at Hillside Lake. And I know we've had this discussion since I got in office. And I share that with you, and it's frustrating. And we're all very upset that the big FEMA grant did not come in. We were told one thing, and, everybody thought we were going to get it, and we didn't. But we have something. And personally, to hear that people aren't as enthused, as you just said, you were a negative on this upcoming grant. And I know it's not what we all want, but it is something. And we have to chip away at this problem, bit by bit. That's the only way this is ever going to get done. We can't do it overnight, and we can't do it in one shot. We clearly can't. I know the supervisor said we probably aren't going to get another grant, but I'll be damned. I'll try for another grant. I don't care. We got to try.
I will elaborate on my thought of the negativity regarding all the filtration if you want me to.
We can talk,
Okay,
but thank you.
all right, thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment. Couple of comments. One about the grant. I remember Stephen, I think it's Steve Gruber, that said, once we do the one grant, it makes it easier to get the rest.
Yeah, and Tom Wood said that, too.
Right? I mean, when he was selling this project
Yeah.
a while ago,
No.
that's what he
Bobby,
maintained.
I got to tell you, I am so down. You can't believe what we put into that big grant.
No,
And
I don't mean
shouldn't-
that.
and I shouldn't
I'm
be
just
that
talking
way.
about
But
going
Stephen,
forward.
no, and Stephen and Tom both said it may open up the door to more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. But I just want to get back to something that Councilman Marinaro said about, the stormwater coming into the lake, water coming into the lake from other areas. I want to address this to the people of the town. This is why I feel that the people of the town need to be, unfortunately, responsible for some of the remediation of that lake. And again, not necessarily everybody on this board was here when things took place, but the people need to know that there has been damage to the lake as a result of the town, not everybody here, but as a result of the town. And unfortunately, it puts them in, in the middle of the mix. And hopefully, they can understand that and, go forward from there. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Anne Marie Baker from Hillside Lake. I wanted to go back to what Mr. Wood said about the grants and what Robert just mentioned. And it isn't just a story. I did work for a fundraising organization that relied heavily on grants, and it really does help you if you have successfully executed a grant-funded project when you go to apply for other grants. The grantors look at that.
Okay.
And I personally am very excited about the filtration project and the grant, and I'm
Okay.
with Councilman Franco on this. I believe it's a great first step. I believe that if we are able to execute it successfully and responsibly, that it will open doors for other grants. And by having that set up, you're talking about the dredging and being concerned that, down the road it would be the same. By having that filtration in place, and I know it's not very big,
Yeah.
but it is something, and it is a start, and maybe, after that, maybe we can get a second one or a third one and have that in place, and then maybe build on that to get a grant for the dredging.
Yeah.
Because if we can show that we have something in place that will keep it from being that way again in
Yeah.
10 years, that it, we would be more likely. So,
Thank you, Anne
and I
Marie.
know it is a lot of work. People who don't do this for a living don't realize it is a lot of work
It's
to
huge,
put together a
yeah.
grant, and there's a lot of competition.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. And I do appreciate
Well, thank
the
you.
work that you did on that. And it is a big disappointment, but
We move on.
maybe we have something else to start with, so thank you
I
for that.
appreciate that
You're
very
welcome.
much.
I'm back.
Mrs. Baker?
Mark, you run the tax roll? You know what's on the tax roll?
Ask your question, because I'm not sure.
Who owns Hillside Lake? Who owns the lake? Who owns the park across from my house? Who owns the beach?
Okay.
Who's listed as the owner?
Well,
I have the deed because I have to supply that with the second part of the grant application. Town of East Fishkill's on the deed.
There's your answer. You wanted to know who owns it. You were talking about ownership before, Mr. Nick, and that's who owns it.
And your signature's on it.
The town already owns the property. They have been responsible for these pieces of the town since 1991, 1992. I think we
Something like
signed the
that.
final papers. Also, let me get my train of thought back. Senior moments, they're terrible. The money.
I went through this years ago.
I'll have to give it up.
just
If I
to-
think of it before we close, I'll come back.
Just to clarify, though, the town of East Fishkill owns lots of assets that are designated for the use of special districts, and only the residents in those special districts pay for the maintenance and the upkeep and of those particular assets, like a water district or a sewer district. So the Hillside Lake Park District isn't independent of the town, it's under the town umbrella. So that doesn't necessarily distinguish who's responsible for, I don't want to get into that debate, but I'm just, that in and of itself doesn't,
When they signed off on it, they were responsible. They had a plan, they did not follow the plan. We're paying for what our former elected officials neglected to do. Go ahead.
If I may, I have copies of the email that was sent for the invite here. Nick, you don't have to go to your spam folder, if I may approach.
Absolutely.
Again, we appreciate as many people as good comments possible.
I still got the email.
As a reminder.
I still got the email.
Okay. If that's it for general comments on general town issues, and again, I thank the Hillside Lake Board for a very civil conversation. Comments from town board members? Okay, there being none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Town board meeting is now closed. Next town board meeting will be the regular meeting of July 28th. There will be no workshops in July and August, but we will take a look at that and keep you posted. Thank you very much.